welcome to today's episode. Today we're going to be making this pouch, or an alternative one. It's so easy to make and I really can't wait to get started with it. It's nice and spacious inside, nice and boxy. So let's get to it. Okay, so we've got the following pieces that we're going to need. 2 sets of front panels, 2 sets of the back panels. Now, because I like to mix and match my panels up, I'm actually going to sew these 2 together to create one panel. That is the front panel. These are going to be the inside lining. Okay, so we're going to need 2 of each, and we're going to need a zip. My zips are 28 centimeter zip, so I've gone for a 30 centimeter cut lengthways, so that will be 30 centimeters along. Okay, I've also got an applique which I've made. The applique is basically just a piece of fabric, and I've put a little bit of padding inside the applique, and I've just kept that, so that's going to go on the front. Again, totally optional. And I've got a pretty piece of sort of boho trim, and I've got the lining which will go in between. I haven't cut the lining yet. I actually want to cut it after I've stitched these 2 together. So what I'm going to do first is actually stitch those together, and then I can cut the lining. I just prefer to do it that way. Of course, you can do it all pre-hand. Let's get started. So to start with, what we're going to do is we're just going to pin our 2 sides together that we're going to sew. So it'll be these 2 and these 2. Give it a pin if you need to, just to hold it in place. And then we're just going to stitch along those 2 sides there. Okay, so we've got our 2 pieces stitched now. You can see that we've got a lovely seam, and we've also got the same on the other side. And I just want to turn it over and just seam press it open. As we always say, it's a good practice because it just reduces the bulk and it just makes it a bit more even when you're putting the interfacing on. Okay, so we'll do that for both. Oh, that one went a bit skew I think, but not a problem. Never mind, these things happen, especially when things are handmade. And remember, you can always straighten it up when you're stitching it, so it's not a big deal. Okay, so we've got our 2 pieces. Now this is going to be slightly bigger because that one's gone skew-if, but like I say, don't panic, it's not a biggie. What we can do is just measure it, and if need be, just make sure so never be worried about little things like this, because they can be rectified. And really, to be honest with you, if it is a little bit skew-if, so what? You know, you are still learning after all, and you know, part of the beauty of a handmade item is the little imperfections sometimes. So it's really nothing to worry about at all. Okay, so now I'm actually going to cut the interfacing to fit that, because I want a nice finish to both of these. And this one I actually used for a different project, so I've got a nice long bit so it won't fit perfectly, but that's okay because I want to leave a seam allowance anyway for the zip, and also for when we sew it all together. So I'm not actually that bothered that it's slightly smaller than the end. I mean, most people will cut it exactly, but then when you are going to put it all together and sew it, the seam becomes quite bulky. So best thing to do is just have it slightly smaller. I mean, mine is a little bit too small. I'm not so worried, so I'm just going to measure and cut this. Just be careful you don't cut the actual fabric at the back. Be careful, because easily done. Okay, so I'm just going to find the gluey side, and then I'm going to just iron this down. Okay, just want to leave enough seam allowance and extra for trimming if need be. Just start in the middle and just slowly pull it out. Okay, and then once you've done a good iron on that side, then you just want to go back over it on the other side just to make sure it's all nicely pressed and flat. Okay, so now we've got both of our pieces ironed and ready for the next step. I just wanted to show you another zip pouch that I've made, and this one is just a flat pouch, so I'll show you how to get to this step before we get to the step of the bigger bag. But with this one, I've actually sewn the applique on. Okay, so I've got my applique here and I want to put it into the center as I've shown you with my other one. So I just want to make sure it's level. My fabric is 12 inches or 30 centimeters. Just going to pin it. You can of course turn it slightly inwards just so that you don't get the fraying on the edge, but because I'm gluing it, I'm not that concerned. Okay, so I've done a quick stitch all the way around. I'm not actually going to stick on the edging until I've turned it back inside out, because I don't want to pull it off when I'm turning it inside out. So for the moment, we'll leave her as she is. So now we're going to attach the zip to one part of the lining and one part of the front panel. So what we need to do first is make sure that we've got our zip in line with the lining, which should be facing up. So it's the right side up, okay? And we're actually going to line up the zip with the edge like that. Just make sure that you slightly zip that open, just so that when you do zip it, you can maneuver it correctly out of the way. Okay, and then we're going to put the top panel face down. So we've got the two good sides together, yeah? And that's going to go onto the top, just like that. So the zip is in between. So just to remind you, we've got the lining, the zip, and the top panel, okay? So just to make sure that doesn't move around, I'm going to add a couple of clips just to hold it together. One there, one at the end, and one in the middle. Make sure it's all nicely lined up. See, the zip does have a tendency to move, so just make sure you have it nice and tight. And if you decide you just want to pick it up and sew it, you couldn't make a worse mistake, because if the zip's skewer, that will be really bad. You can't hide a badly sewn zip. Okay, so we want to make sure and double sure that that's all nicely lined up, okay? Using our zipper foot, we're going to stitch along the edge of that. We're going to give it a little bit of space, so we don't want to sew over the zipper. So just be careful and bear that in mind. But we're just going to use the zipper foot to go right the way down. Okay, so now that we've sewn it, and I've shown you how it should look, when we open it, you should have your zipper sewn in the middle there. Push that to the back, see? So once that's all lined up, like that, and then we're gonna actually stitch along this edge here, as close to the edge as you possibly can without actually touching the zip, and we just want to secure that together, okay? Okay, so now that we've done that top stitching, we're going to put the other side of the fabric onto the opposite side of the zip. So I like to leave this open a little bit, just so that I don't forget that I've got to have a zip at the end there. Okay, so we're going to put the lining like we did last time, lining face side up. So that's the lining on the inside of that. And we're going to place it on the same way that we did before. We're just going to line the zipper up with the edge, exactly as we did before. And then we're going to put this one face side down, and that's going to go and line right up with the zipper as before. Excuse me, my hair. And then clip it into place like you did last time. And then just for good measure, I am going to put 2 pins through the sandwich, just because if there is any movement it will make that zip look awkward, and I don't want that to happen. Okay, so we're now ready to sew straight down there, just like we did last time with our little sandwich. Okay, so now that we've stitched that side as well, when we open it we can see that we need to now just do that final stitching along there. Just make sure that you've got both sides. So you want to make sure you've got the lining and the top piece, because that would be quite frustrating getting to the end and then, oh no! So we're just going to, well, that side's already done, we're just going to do top stitching along that one now, okay? Okay, so we've done the top stitching, it's all done, and we've got the front and back of our bag, inside and outside of our bags. So now what we're going to have to do is, I have actually ironed it just so you know as well, we're going to put these 2 sides together and these 2 sides together. And this lining did not stick very well. We're going to put the sides together like that, and we're actually going to stitch all the way around the lining like we've done with our other bags that we've made, and we're going to leave an opening of about, sort of, I'd say that much. I mean, if you can do a bit further down, it's probably better to get the zip part sealed as much as possible, and then you just want to go all the way around the rest of it. And then we're going to do the same with that, but we're actually going to go all the way around with the outside, okay? So what we'll do first is pin this together. And something to bear in mind is the way the zip is facing. Let's just pin this together first. And I'm just going to pin the opening open like that. And I do like to mark it as well. So now with our zip, we want, my lining's come off, I didn't iron that very well, so never mind, I'll do that again. So we want the zip ends facing inwards. So what we're going to do is that we're actually going to open the zip a little just to make life easier for ourselves. Don't worry about the lining, I'll sort that out. Okay, and we want the 2 zip ends together, and let's make sure it's all straight. And we're just going to clip those 2 together. See, that one's facing outwards and that would have been a disaster. So you want to make sure both the zips are facing the same way for a start, and that they're both facing into the bag, not out of the bag, because it just helps when you're opening and closing the bag. You don't want it poking outwards, do you? So in fact, I'm going to use one of these clips just to hold that in place. We'll just separate that bit there, like I normally do. Okay, oh, not that one, that's it. Okay, so that's holding that zip in place, and then we'll do the same on this side. We just want to make sure it's facing downwards. Make sure it's facing downwards, that's it. And just clip that one in too. That's it. And the first thing we'll do then is just stitch up to the lining. So before we sew it, I did forget to mention, the thing to do at this point is to make the indents which will boxify our zip pouch. Now, obviously, if you don't want to have a box zip pouch, then you can skip this step and you would literally just do as I was saying, just sew all the way around and just leave the little gap. But if you do want the zip pouch, then, sorry, the box zip pouch, then what we will need to do is take out 2 squares worth in the bottom corners of both the lining and the outside of the fabric. If you want to do this for both, you can. You can do it for the top and you can do it for the bottom, but I'm actually only going to do it for the bottom in this video. I will show you how to do both. So what we would want to do here is take our ruler and mark a 2" by 2" square. Now, thankfully I have this ruler, which really is helpful for this job, and that is simply makes life so much easier when you want to line things up and cut square. So I'm going to mark 2 inches out the bottom, 2 inches that way, and then obviously 2 inches downwards I'm also going to do, and because mine is 12 inches, I can just use the ruler in the same point, but you move yours if you need to. So I've got my 2" by 2", and then I just need to go downwards as well. So as we've got our little squares, we actually want to cut them out. I'm a bit absent-minded today. I think it's just one of those days. You girls understand, don't you? And guys, of course. Might be guys watching. Okay, so let's snip that out, and then I'll do the same for the other side as well. I just want to make sure I sew this first. I'm just going to snip those little squares. And don't throw these squares away. You know, as a crafter, you should know that you always find a craft for these little things. And trust me, I have a few up my sleeve, so don't be chucking them away. I mean, you don't want to keep ridiculously small pieces which you can't even do anything with, but these are quite a good size, aren't they? So keep those. Okay, so now you should end up with that kind of thing. And remember when I was saying we do need to leave the gap to turn it out, so we still want to do that. It's just going to be a little bit smaller now because it's just easier this way, so I'm going to make it. So that gap I'm going to leave open, but the rest I'm going to stitch, and you want to stitch all the way down there, skip that, and you want to stitch all the way down there. And then I'll show you what we're going to do with the openings on this and this, okay? Okay, so as you see, I've stitched along the bottom, along that side, a little bit there, and that bit, and I've left the little opening just there, okay? Now, let's unpin this for a sec, just so I can show you what we're going to do next. We're actually going to open these 2 edges, line up, so you're literally taking it from flat, opening it out like that, and then we're just going to line up the 2 edges. You know, I like to, as I always say, open up the seams. Let's try and get that one. Come on, you. Nearly that's it. Okay, so we've got that lovely little corner there, and we're going to place a pin, just holding those 2 seams together like that. Okay, bit fiddly, but you'll get there, just take your time. And then we actually want to stitch along that opening there, and we're just going to close that up. Okay, so we want to do the same with the other side. Line it up, okay, and then pin that one as as well. Watch your fingers, that's it. And then you're going to stitch down both sides. So we've got two to do there. Okay. So once you've stitched those, you can press this open as well, like I did. Just give that a little press open. Okay, and there we have it. We've boxed the bottom, and that will be the size of our inside of our bag. Next step, we're going to do the same thing on this side. It's all lined up, nice and flat. Remember, it may not lie perfectly flat here because that's where the zip is, but I'm lining my seams up to make sure that the bottom then lines up, see? It's all right, I'm just replacing the lining here because mine came off. I obviously didn't iron it hard enough, and it did fall off while I was sewing it, so I'm just putting it back in. Don't worry, I'll iron it again in a sec. Okay, so neat and flush. 2 inches lined up. Okay, let's get rid of that. Okay, so we want to leave a little bit extra compared to the end of the other side, just because we want to leave the allowance for the bag to sit inside nicely. So where you've cut, just allow a couple of millimeters. You don't need to make it so much bigger. Okay, so I can use that bit for seam allowance, and it just gives me that extra room for manoeuvring, and that's going to make a big difference to when we tuck the lining into the main part of the bag. Okay, now we're ready to stitch again, and we're going to go down sides and along bottom, and we're going to miss this section out. Okay. Okay, so the sides have been done. I've also done the boxing just as I did with the bottom there. So the box bag is well on its way. It's not going to be a complete box. I'm actually going to leave the top part open on this particular bag, but I will show you on another video how to do a complete box. I am actually going to, because there's a gap at the bottom, I've just cut a little bit extra out of the lining. I'm just going to iron that onto the bottom there just to cover up that extra piece. I'm just going to snip this bit off, just because I was a little bit short on this particular box, on this particular bag, sorry. I just want to make sure I don't want to pull those seams out any further. Okay, that's about right. So I'll iron that part on, and then it's going to be ready to turn it inside out. Okay, so now I've patched the bottom up. It's not ideal, but you won't be able to see it or feel it anyway. It's not a big problem. And I've just given it a little quick iron just to box it out, and now we're going to try and turn it inside out. So find that little opening. Where are you? There you are. Well, this is a little tricky because we've got all that lining, but we want to make sure the zip's open. And then grab one corner and pull it through gently as you can. Be careful, you don't want to rip the seam. Lovely. Push it all through. You can always use a chopstick, which is one of the best tools ever for this. And just so we can reach all the nooks and crannies. Okay, there we go, the lining's in. Okay, and then you can just give your bag a little iron all the way round, just to make sure that it's all sitting nicely. So I'm just going to do that now, just give it a quick iron, and then I'm going to just finish off the bag with the edging that I was going to do. But we're almost there. So far it's looking quite nice. So I was going to do this one around the edging, but unfortunately I haven't got enough. So I'm not going to use that one now. I'm going to use a different one, which I think will still look quite pretty, and it ties in, it's quite contrasting against the navy. So I'm going to go with that one. And another thing I mean, this is an alternative to glue, it's just the hemming that you get from any major sort of supermarket or crafts, you know, haberdashery or sewing shop, and it just fuses two edgings together. And I thought, just because it's in that shape, it's just so much easier to use on this occasion. So what I'm going to do is just measure it and cut it, and then I'm going to have to cut it in. I'm going to have to cut it in half because it's a lot wider than the ribbon. So bear with me, just give that a little snip, and then we've got enough for two sides there. Okay, so I'll use that one for the next one. Okay, and I just want to put that. Actually, I'll start. I'll just start at the bottom just because. Okay, so we've lined that up on the edge there like that. Make sure it's all straight. So just give that little iron down. Don't worry about that corner, we'll sort that out after. I just want to iron this down. This hemming. I mean, you can get other forms of glues which might be a bit more stronger than using this kind of trick, but in this circumstance I think it's fine. You can always stitch over it if you're worried that it's going to start coming off, but that seems pretty adhered to quite well. Okay, don't stick your finger to it, will you? Just do the same thing. Sew that down. The reason I'm not cutting it is because it will start to fray, and we don't want that to happen. So it's better just to make sure it's all stuck, then you can hand stitch it at the end. Okay, it's not going to hold it forever actually, so probably will be better just to do a little running stitch with a similar colour. Okay, and then the final side, let's try and get that all done. Let's cut that bit off. Okay, so we'll keep that longer one. better as well. I'm just going to put that in there. Okay. Okay, and there you have it. Your very own little oblong zip pouch, which you can open quite wide, close, boxed at the bottom. And remember, you can also make a smaller one, but this one's just sewn flat at the bottom, and it's a smaller pouch, but it's quite similar. It's got the lining, same thing. The lining inside is like a pouch, but I didn't box off the ends, so there's no need to cut the corners off the ends with this one. You just sew all the way around. Remember to leave enough space to turn the bag inside out, but aside from that, you just sew all the way around. So we've got a flat one and we've got a boxed one, and there we have it. So as you can see, they're so easy to make, and honestly you can make them for presents and all sorts. Everyone will be loving these, because which girl doesn't like a nice little zip bag? You can put so much stuff in there, like as a makeup bag, you can use it as a toiletry bag, or keep your spare underwear when you go away in there. You know, there's a multitude of uses for them. So do have fun and just enjoy the process. You know, when you're learning a new skill or when you're trying something new out, sometimes it doesn't always go to plan, and that's okay. The fact that you're having a go should be enough. Honestly, you get better with time and with practice. So the more you do, the better you'll get. Until next time, I'm looking forward to seeing you again. Please do subscribe and give me a thumbs up if you haven't already done so, and I'll see you soon.